I talked about it with the Indianapolis Colts. It's amazing what a difference a year make, and it's what a difference a year makes in terms of when you get a young franchise quarterback. It's amazing how much it instantly changes the whole environment, the whole dynamic shifts of your organization. For many years, the Washington Redskins have been in desperate, desperate need of that big time franchise quarterback that becomes the identity of that organization. You even go back to the three Super Bowl winning teams under Joe Gibbs. Each and every one of them had a different starting quarterback. You had Theismann in the first one, Doug Williams in the second one, and Mark Rippon, of all people, in the third one. So even when they were winning championships in the 80s and early 90s, they still lacked that true franchise signal caller. But that franchise signal caller came for the Washington Redskins last year in RG3. And this was an example to me of a team that got hot behind a young quarterback, found a real revelation in a running back in Alfred Morris, and was able to ride that ball and wave of momentum to a division championship and a playoff appearance. A great season for the Washington Redskins. Now, with that comes the expectations that the next year is going to be even better. And I don't really think that's the case for the Washington Redskins. I think this is a team that's going to win 6, maybe at the most 7 games this year, and actually finish last in the NFC East. I realize that'll be an unpopular pick, but you know what? There's reasons I feel that way. I kind of feel like this team was inflated a little bit by helium last year. In part, they got caught up in the whole RG3 thing. You had Cousins coming off the bench at times and step in and play big when he needed to. The bottom line is yes, you've got RG3, but even more important to their success last year was Alfred Morris. And in that Shanahan scheme, you always say, oh, running backs, he can produce them a dime a dozen. But you look outside at wide receiver. You've got some guys that look like they bring some things to the table, such as Garcon and Hankerson and etc., but they really lack explosive, big-time playmakers on the outside that can be consistently relied upon by your young quarterback, RG3. You've got Fred Davis at tight end, but you really don't have much else there. You have an okay offensive line, but they could be better. This unit, at times, will score points in 2013. At times, they'll be able to move the ball, especially on the ground, which always helps. But I still think they really lack the weapons they need to be taken more seriously as NFC title contenders. They really lack those consistent yet explosive big-time playmakers on the outside at wide receiver for that young quarterback in RG3. Defensively, this is a unit that was last year. It didn't help losing Arakpo early in the year. That type of stuff doesn't help. Losing character, that type of stuff doesn't help. But this was not a great unit to begin with. And I don't necessarily see in the offseason where they got a whole lot better, which again sometimes is part of the problem when you have to give up so much in the draft for somebody like an RG3 via trade, that down the road, when you have these glaring holes that you need to address, you're not able to address them as effectively without going and plunking way too much money down in free agency, which Daniel Snyder, for some odd reason, sort of restrained himself for a change. Sort of? I guess you could say sort of, compared to the Daniel Snyder of old. The biggest thing for this organization is that Daniel Snyder finally started to get the fuck out of the way. That's the biggest thing. It's a big problem in Dallas with Jerry Jones. It was the biggest problem for many years with the Washington Redskins. Daniel Snyder wanted to fashion himself as a Jerry Jones without the 3 Super Bowl victories to be able to try and justify it. He just wanted to spend big money, interfere, and blah, blah, blah. And he's finally, it looks like, started to get out of the way, which is a better thing for the Washington Redskins. I think this is a team that's going to have to win most of their games by scoring a lot of points. I don't think their defense is very good. Sorry, I don't. The NFC East is kind of a good division in the sense that I think everybody is pretty closely packed together. I really do. And I just think with the Redskins winning the division last year, they're going to have a tougher schedule this year, and I think that's going to catch up with them. Reality will catch up with them a little bit more. I don't think they were as good as they were last year in terms of their record showing them to be a 10-16. They weren't that good of a team. They just finished 10-6, and there is a clear-cut difference between the two. I anticipate, again, like I said, the Washington Redskins to win 6 or 7 games and actually bring up the rear in the NFC East. That doesn't necessarily make it a terrible year, but I do envision it being a bit of a disappointing year for Washington Redskins fans, especially if RG3 does not come back 100% ready to go healthy to start off the 2013 season.